Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Doreen Moracha, the founder of I Am a Beautiful Story, which is also the name of this beautiful YouTube channel. And every Friday I bring you educational, inspirational, and amazing videos in relation to the HIV and AIDS perspective. I give you the right information, I give you answers to your questions, and today I am hosting a doctor on our YouTube channel so that we get to cancel or demystify the myths and misconceptions related to HIV and AIDS. And we have gone through a very broad range of questions, and this video is going to be a two-part series. So this is part one if you're looking at it, and then part two is going to be next week on Friday. And please keep it here, okay? Keep it here, because all your questions from discordant couples to U equals to U to HIV prevention to care and treatment, all of them have been answered on this video, and you need to follow it today and next week on Friday, because I had to, it was a long video, I had to cut it into two. So
my name is Dr. Lazarus Momanyi. I work at the Ministry of Health, the Division of National AIDS and STI Control Program, also known as NASCOP. And I work as the manager for care and treatment in the HIV program.
Karibu sana, Dr. Lazarus. So, my first question, a question that I am always asked: what are the symptoms of HIV and AIDS?
All right, so the symptoms of HIV and AIDS will really depend, they are varied depending at the time at which you are diagnosed. So for most people, they'll actually have no symptoms in the early stages, because by then the virus has not really gone up so much, and the immunity is still okay. And that's what we call usually the stage 1 and stage 2 of HIV infection. But now, if you are not diagnosed early and put on treatment, then you'll progress into what we call stage 3 and stage 4. And this is what we call now advanced HIV disease. And therefore, at this time, you might start experiencing things like weight loss. You might have opportunistic infections might come in, like TB, like diarrhea. So you might be having some of those symptoms, including coughs, night sweats, depending on the opportunistic infection that you have at that time. But it's also very important to know that most of the people who have HIV actually will have no symptoms, because they're still in the early stages. And for the few who progress into the stage 3 and stage 4, those are the ones who are likely to have symptoms. So the people who have HIV could actually be anyone walking around looking very healthy. They have not lost weight, they don't have any symptoms, and they actually don't know that they actually have been infected with HIV. Hence, really the importance of everyone needing to know their status.
Ah, that is nice. So, can you tell from looking at a person that they're living with HIV or not, or you need the test?
Actually, you can't. You can't be able to tell just by looking that someone has HIV. And hence, the only way for us to know that this person is infected is by doing an HIV test. And currently, we actually have 2 tests that are recommended by the Ministry of Health. There's the one that is done at the facility, which is done through blood. And there's also one that you can be able to do on yourself, called an HIV self-test, which can also be either done by taking a sample from your gums in your mouth, or by also there's another one for pricking your finger. Both tests, the one for self-test and the one done at the facility, have very good sensitivity, meaning that if you use it, then you are likely to get very accurate results if you use it correctly.
Demystify for us the issue of false negatives and false positives. Is that a thing, or it's just a myth and misconception?
Yeah, so scientifically, when you do a test, you start from the point that either you are positive for the test or you are negative for the test. And it's the same thing for HIV. So a false negative means that the person is actually HIV positive, but when they use the test was done, the test showed that they are negative. And the false positive means that the person is HIV negative, but when they did the test wrongly gave the results that the person is HIV negative. So what this means that these are both of them are false positive and a false negative are wrong results. So in the context of HIV, you may get a false positive test if the test is not accurately done by the healthcare worker. Remember, there's a procedure which says you need to have your finger pricked, you need to wipe, you need to put the drop, there's a number of drops of the buffer you need to put, and also the time that you need to interpret the test. So there's a standard procedure that we use for us to conduct a test, and all of our HIV test service providers have actually been taken through this procedure. So what this means that also the other reason why you could have wrong results, either false negative or false positive, if you are using a test that is the lab test or the test that you're using has expired. So one of the things that we train our HTS providers or HIV testing service providers is to ensure that the procedure is followed to the dot. And part of the other mechanism that we have also put in place to ensure that we give you the correct results is by ensuring that you don't only use one test. So when you do, for example, the first test is called determine, there's a second. If you test positive, you have to confirm with a second test, which is called the first response. And so if both tests are positive, then we say you are actually HIV positive. But if one test is positive and the other one is negative, then you have to use another third test for us to be able to determine that which of the two tests was actually correct. And the other thing we also need to know that once you've tested positive from the wherever you are tested, whether it's at the patient center or at the NC clinic, when you go to the CCC, again, it has to be confirmed a second time by a different HTS provider. So all these mechanisms and checks you put in place is to ensure that no person is wrongly put on treatment. You've heard stories about a person who's using ARVs and actually they're not HIV positive. The other thing I also want to mention is that we've heard about this thing that once you've been put on treatment, after some time of using treatment, you become what we call, you have an undetectable viral load. So the undetectable viral load does not actually mean that you don't have HIV. So if this person was still to go for an HIV test, because the HIV test uses antibodies, not the virus, so that the person will still be HIV positive, but in terms of the virus, they've actually been able to suppress the virus.
So when it comes to the people who, like, for example, they ask me this question that I have Googled my symptoms, and my symptoms come out as it's like I have HIV, but when I test, the test is coming out negative. Where would you classify this? Is this a psychological issue, or it's the HIV that has not yet progressed? Maybe it's in the window period or something.
Sure. So this is what I can say about that. Remember, HIV is a chronic infection, and by HIV itself you don't have symptoms because of HIV itself. You have symptoms because of the opportunistic infections that come into your body because of the HIV. So some of these symptoms that you may have because of the opportunistic infections when you are HIV positive can also be very similar to some of the symptoms that could be caused by non-HIV related complications. For example, a person who has, let's say, some allergy can actually be coughing. Or they have maybe asthma, they can actually be coughing, but it's not that they have HIV or they have TB, but it's because of the asthma or the allergy that they have. A person who has some diarrhea infection could actually be having diarrhea, but it's not because of HIV or the diarrhea, but because of the diarrhea infection that the person has. A person who has cancer can actually lose weight, and so some of the symptoms will mimic what a person who has HIV can show, but the only way to determine now whether it's HIV or it's another thing is actually to have an HIV test. And for the people now who are actually saying that I have symptoms or the HIV test is negative, then it means that then also they need now to be investigated for what else could they be having that's actually causing the illness. And we have actually seen a lot of people, like, to find people are losing weight, maybe someone has some cancer, someone that's not been detected. And they're losing weight, and people are saying, hey, you must have a conda son. So like, hey, what's happening here? But then these people actually, they're being judged wrongly because they could actually be having a lot of issues of their health which is not related to HIV.
So when it comes to treatment, does time matter? The time that you're taking your ARVs, does it matter to achieving viral suppression?
Yes, the time matters. One is that when we detect you with HIV in Kenya now, the policy or the guidelines say test and treat. meaning that once you've been found to be HIV positive, we put you on treatment within 2 weeks, or sometimes even on the same day if you are willing, but we have to take you through of course, the adherence preparation, treatment preparation. So this is very critical because you've seen that the longer you wait to start treatment, then the more the HIV progresses, and therefore your outcomes are not good. In the past, we used to say you wait for the CD4 to become below 250, below 200 for you to start. But now the policy says start everyone. And especially for pregnant women, because we know also there's the risk of infecting the child. And also for children, we say that ideally once they are tested positive, they should start on the same day to ensure that we start your treatment, that you're able to reverse the viral load, that you don't, for the mother who's positive pregnant, she doesn't infect the child, and for the child who's HIV positive, the HIV does not, because in children usually HIV advances very fast. So the timing is very important. It's important that once you're diagnosed, you start your treatment immediately. And also, once you start your treatment, it's also important that you become adherent to the treatment, and also that you take it consistently, at the correct time, at the correct dosing, to ensure that you can suppress the virus.
So we have seen discordant couples. They exist where two people have two different HIV statuses, and some people call the HIV negative partner a carrier. Is a carrier a thing, and what really brings about discordant couples?
Okay, thank you for that important question, and it's something that we deal with very often. So a discordant couple, let me start first out by just explaining what a discordant couple is. A discordant couple means that there are two people who are involved sexually, they're sexual partners, meaning that they're having regular and most of the time would be unprotected or protected sex, but one person is HIV positive and the other one is negative. And this is a question or something that has brought a lot of discussions in the past, where there was a lot of myths. And some of the myths were that some people are immune, meaning that they are not able to get infected, or they have some level of immunity or something in their body system that prevents them from getting infected. So this thing really brings a lot of issues because one, there's a lot of suspicion who went out first out of the relationship, who brought HIV and all that. And you can actually, like, even you can imagine like in a marriage setup where maybe the wife is positive and the man is negative, it can bring a lot of issues, sometimes even gender-based violence. So it's something that we're really very careful to explain and how it happens. So one is that what you've known from what science has shown is that you do not necessarily get infected by one sexual act. For some people, it may take 2 sexual acts. For some people, it may take 4 or 5 sexual acts to be able to get infected. And there are part of the reasons part of the time that increase the chance of transmitting the virus to the other person. The first number one factor that determines if you are going to transmit to your partner is the HIV viral load of the person who is HIV positive. So that means that for people who have very high viral loads, there's a very higher chance that when they have a sexual unprotected sexual act with their partners, they are likely to infect the other person. The other things that increase chances of infecting the other person is, for example, if you have like some of the sexually transmitted illness that cause some ulcers around the private or the sexual organs, and therefore it means that the viral shedding of the person is shedding the virus much faster and they're able to maybe infect the other person. So therefore what this means is that for some people, they could be living with a partner and despite having repeated sexual intercourse, they have not infected the other partner. But what research has shown is that with repeated sexual acts, then ultimately the other person will probably get infected. There's also been some scenarios or some information in the past about some very small population of people who we have thought that maybe they have something within their CD4 that does not allow the virus to enter, but that would be a very small 0.00 something percent, and they do not literally exist in our general population. They are not many. So from the perspective of the health system, what you've done, there are a number of things that we do to protect the HIV negative partner, because we would want that the partner who is HIV negative remains HIV negative. So one of the things that we try to do, one is to ensure that the person who is HIV positive is facilitated to disclose, because that's very important. Number two, we ensure that the person who is HIV positive is put on treatment, and therefore we are able to reduce the viral load person to such a level that it's undetectable, and science has shown that actually if you are undetectable, then your chances of transmitting to the other person are very minimal, or they're to a very small percentage. The third thing that we are actually now doing is that also for the person who is HIV negative, there's now something available called pre-exposure prophylaxis, also known as PrEP. So this is a drug that the person takes a tablet every day, and it has been shown that if they actually take that tablet for a long time, then they are able to prevent themselves from getting virus, and they have to be adherent to the treatment. And this is mainly, we actually give it mainly to the person who is a partner to the person who is HIV positive and their virus is still high. So all this is things that we are doing, and of course the other things that we still recommend, you have to use condoms and all those. So
but people will ask, if
yes,
my partner is undetectable, why should I use condoms and I'm on PrEP?
Yes, so this is something that we are now discussing because we don't want to pass the wrong message that now you can discard PrEP because the person is undetectable. And at the same time for condoms, remember for condoms, they do not only prevent HIV, they also prevent other sexually transmitted diseases like gonorrhea, syphilis and all that, and even herpes and all that. Yeah. So for condoms, it's critically important that, especially for where it becomes a challenge, especially where it's like a marriage situation, because we know that people in marriage rarely do use condoms. So I think the number one most important thing that we really want to ensure is that the person who is HIV positive is virally suppressed, because we know that the consistency of using condoms is very low, and even for PrEP, we know that some people still have issues with the uptake of PrEP. So really our number one chance, our number one opportunity is to ensure that we suppress the person who is HIV positive.